Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm your host, Noise Era, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer, and I have titled this episode, Normalizing Disorders, Third World Warfare, and Generational Manipulation. Why? Well, have you seen the news? Reports are coming out about how social media is raising people's heart rates, blood pressures, and more. Jose Peralta, the New York State Senator, has been found to die from a flu shot. Yeah, that's right. 15 known terrorists have been arrested on our southern border, and apparently China has gone through and created its first wave of designer babies. We have all kinds of different things to discuss in this episode, that's for sure. I hope you guys are paying attention, but first, before we do, please think about becoming an exclusive member. We have all kinds of different programs and tiers to help support the operation. I'll put the link for the description in the description bar below. If you guys want to download the show notes to follow along, some people have told us that it helps. Please do. We do all this hard work for you. And if you haven't listened to or paid attention to the amazing episodes that we've had with our guests, Freddie of FR Evolution, Christy Scarborough of Corrupt Vaccines, and Adam of Shamanic Philosophy, you're slacking. I'll put the links for those as well below. And with that being said, let's start the show. Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I'm your host, Noise Era, Freedom Faction, whichever one you prefer. And whoa, ho ho ho, and I don't mean ho 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 as in Santa. I'm saying whoa, we're already in December, and we're still trying to make sense of everything that's going on. Maybe that's our problem. Maybe if we stop trying to make sense of all this chaos, it wouldn't make sense. It would make sense. I think that's the only thing we're guilty of, is trying to filter through all the craziness and figure out what's going on. If you guys haven't listened to some of the fantastic guests that we have had on over the past few weeks, you're slacking. While we're doing great things here with the flagship program, our guests, they make the show. The content, for sure, but our guests, I think they're onto something. And if you ask me, I think that's what the whole purpose of social media is. Now, I talk about this all the time, how we use their tools of enslavement for enlightenment. We use their tools of control for liberation. We're trying to help free you from this matrix they're trying to put you in. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in to this edition of Factions of Freedom. We have a lot of things to discuss with you, good people. Apparently, we pay attention to a lot of things on the show, from mental health, psychology, sociology, science, environmental stuff, politics. We pay attention to a lot. Conspiracies, for sure. And I think it's kind of crazy. Personally, I feel like it's kind of wild to see a lot of the things take place, a lot of things develop. Before there used to be kind of like an ebb and flow, a push and pull. Now it just seems like everything's just being pushed. Everything just seems like it's being thrown in overdrive. We gotta, and I don't know if there's a way to fight this. I think the only way to fight this is to get engaged. We are in a culture war for sure. They want to have you think it's race. No, it's culture. It's the idea, and this is what you see with these totalitarian people. You either obey them or you get censored. You obey them or you become part of the problem. This is the reality that's being foisted onto us. And this is not really good, because you have people growing up underneath this kind of radical totalitarian ideology that's being spread. This is keeping people from discovering their own inner voices and what drives them, for fear of persecution. I feel like you will find yourself in the heat of battle. You have got to know what you stand for, or you will fall for everything. We got a lot of people out there, a lot of useful idiots falling for everything. And that's why, again, it's dangerous. Misinformation is an epidemic, just like the opioid epidemic. And this has a long-standing effects on the mental health of people, on the psyche, on the sociological aspects of society. So much. But no, just take those selfies. You'll be all right. No! Keep eating that fancy food. Don't think about the changes that are taking place. You see, we're not going to be one of those shoulda, coulda, woulda, didn't do jack squat types of people, types of organizations. We're going to step up. We're going to grow, and we're going to expand in the face of this adversity, as we always have. That's why we are here. That's why we're talking about these types of things. So let me get off my soapbox, and let's start the show. I wanted to kind of start to kick off the episode talking about things that I think people really are already aware. There's a report that came out earlier this week talking about how when people log on to social media, their heart rates go up, their blood pressure goes up, and I can admit, I can attest to this. If I can definitely say when I'm using social media, there is probably a noticeable uptick in my heart rate because I'm communicating with people, I'm posting things, I'm trying to organize stuff. I can personally attest to the fact that this is real. And this is what we have to think about when we're moving forward into this future. They already have us psychologically addicted and emotionally addicted to technology. I'll play for you guys a clip after this study of even a baby given a phone who begins to pitch a fit the minute it's taken away from them. Are they addicted to the blue light? Are they addicted to the interaction? Are they addicted to the phones? But here is this quick report. Let's take a listen.
Some people spend their lives searching for happiness.
And with smartphones close by, many of us look for it online. But is social media making us happy or miserable? WCCO conducted a special experiment to find out. As Liz Collin discovered, the results even surprised the experts.
Do you think you are addicted to your phone?
Yes.
We begin our experiment with Belle Bossman, a 15-year-old high school sophomore, and your more typical social media user.
I use Snapchat, Visco, iMessage.
Belle's tracked it before. She checks her phone hundreds of times a day.
It's just what everyone does.
Studies show teenagers spend an average of 9 hours a day online. We wondered, at what cost? Inside Hennepin Healthcare's Clinic and Specialty Center's Cardiac Rehabilitation Center, exercise physiologist Jill Carter measures two numbers for our test.
We're going to be fine.
Blood pressure and heart rate.
To get a true resting blood pressure, you have to be relaxed.
Carter lets Belle relax for 5 minutes first to get her resting rates. Her blood pressure reading is 117/67. Then she gets her phone back to look at social media.
And then we'll check another reading.
Just a few minutes later, there's a difference.
Your resting heart rate was 65 beats a minute when you were just relaxed and at rest. And since you've been on your phone, it's up to 85 beats a minute.
We watch those beats climb every time Belle went online.
We get your blood pressure cut.
Before we get to her final results, we wanted to see if adults registered the same reaction.
Let's get your resting reading.
For that, we watched Tracy Peltier, the busy realtor and mother of 3 young girls, who admittedly worries about their future with phones.
The social media scares me.
While Tracy recognizes her daughters will grow up in a digital world she didn't, she is fully aware how her Facebook and Instagram accounts affect her own mood.
People put their firm beliefs out there for everybody to read.
From politics to youth sports, we give Tracy her phone back to check the feeds that get her fired up. In a few minutes, a change.
61 to 74. That's a little more of a jump, heart rate wise, but not so much blood pressure wise for you.
Tracy's blood pressure went from 125/80 to 131/87.
When you're talking about people that are, using it day in and day out, it's not appearing to be very healthy for them, actually.
Clinical psychologist Dr. Matthew Sizdak points to the research already indicating the damage social media is doing to our mental health, whether it be at work, on a walk, or even a sporting event. He says constant checkers are at the greatest risk for depression, loneliness, and stress, in a constant state of comparison to other people.
Maybe for some individuals, brief interactions on social media do add value, but the high quantities, I think it's really questionable about the real value that it adds to their life. Does it really enrich it or not? Doesn't seem to be the case.
I'm never really not on my phone.
Which brings us back to Belle and the physical toll.
Important stuff. Definitely important stuff. And, I want to cut this short because Definitely go check it out for yourself. See what else they have to say as far as people using social media and how it's affecting us. I'll be going into a few studies, or at least a few posts that talk about how mental disorders, mental health disorders are on the rise. And this is all correlating to the usage of Facebook. But before we do, let me play for you guys this clip of this baby. And it's going to seem adorable at first, but let me play for you this clip of this baby freaking out about having its phone taken.
Can I see this?
And then just like that, they give them the phone, and like a pacifier, that baby's calm all over again. Now, whole lot of things I want to touch on here. This is just evidence of our society. I think everybody's seen a baby get onto YouTube, a baby get onto Facebook, any kind of the games that are out there, and then they're whiz kids with it. This is what we're handing down to our next generation. There are already children who are being raised on social media who have profiles who didn't even make them. Their parents made them. Their parents are cataloging and archiving their life. And you got to think, people are already doing things for the likes, sharing content, and as I said before, not really speaking about what they really feel. They're living this false life through social media. And we've talked about this time and time again. This is why what you see me doing with the operation is just that, to spread a little dose of reality. A little bit of reality every time you see what we're posting about. And granted, we could be classified as possibly those constant checkers. You know, we have the newsfeed reader that we try to, find all the posts. I'm looking at least like 30 different outlets every day to try to get you guys consistent information. To a degree, I am probably a victim of this. But what I'm trying to tell you guys is this isn't exclusive. Everybody to some degree is a part of this. This is what happens when the world goes online. It's not just AOL. America's not just online. The world is online. And people are suffering because of these types of things. You see, this is why when we have the guests on, I talked about this just the other day, how I don't really necessarily repost a lot of people's content. I consider an interview a repost because we need to get off social media. In our Instagram story this week, you might have seen me where I told you I dream of the days where I don't have to slave over social media and I can just do podcasting and radio. Because that's exactly what we're doing. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Snapchat, all of these people are profiteering off of your data. Profiteering off of your usage. Profiteering off of us, essentially. If you didn't think taxes was bad, if you didn't think this left-right duopoly was bad, now we have a whole nother buffer in the system. You've heard me talk about it time and time again. The concept of them stifling our awakening. You see. But here, let me get into this right here. Some articles for you guys. I'll just go over a few headlines. Mental health disorders are on the rise among children. This is by End Times Headlines. We put this up November 23rd. It's by Ricky Scaparo. Moving over, it says, if America is such a happy place, why is the suicide rate up 34% since the year 2000? That was by STHF Plan. Apparently, it was a repost by Michael Snyder at the Economic Collapse blog. And then the very same day, by Henry Bodkin of the Telegraph UK, the number of boys with eating disorders doubles. Think about that. NHS figures show 1 in 8 people under the age of 19 in England had a disorder in 2017. 1 in 8 people under 19 in England have a mental disorder. And these are according to the first official statistics to be published for 13 years. The figures, based on a survey of 9,117 children and young people, showed the incidence of disorders rose from 1 in 6 for people aged 17 to 19. Boys were found to be more likely to have a mental health disorder than girls until the age of 11. Between 11 and 16, both sexes were equally likely to have a mental health disorder. But by the time they reached 17 to 19, girls were more than twice as likely to have a disorder. Within this age range, almost 1 in 4 girls has a mental disorder, and half of those said they have had self-harm or attempted suicide. This may reflect girls' concerns about body image, which can be exacerbated by social media. 1 in 18 women aged 17 to 19 had a body dysmorphic disorder, while males between 11 and 19 were more likely to have higher self-esteem. Children and young people aged 11 and 19 were found to spend more time on social media, and 1 in 5 in the same age group said they had been cyberbullied in the last year. The NHS digital survey published on Thursday but carried out last year also included preschool children for the first time, among whom the prevalence of mental health disorders was found to be 1 in 18. In this age group, boys were more than 50% likely to have a disorder than girls. Think about this. Really think about this. Like, what am I reading to you guys? I'm talking about how, and you know, this could be up for debate, whether or not these people are going outside, whether or not these people are socializing, whether or not these people are pursuing passions, whether or not these people are aware of all the things that are going on, and if they're trying to actually combat it. You see, let me continue on. Let me finish this little bit of the article. It says the last such report, conducted in 2004 and published in 2005, found that 1 in 10 children, 10.1%, had a clinically diagnosed mental disorder, but it only surveyed children aged 5 to 15. The directly comparable figures in the new survey showed a slight rise to 11.2%, saying that there was a more significant increase in emotional disorders such as anxiety, depression, mania, and bipolar affective disorders, which rose from 3.9 in 2004 to 5.8 last year. Experts said the figures reflected their own observations. So basically, we have people who were losing their mind. I've talked about this idea of psychosis. We're losing our minds. They're legalizing lunacy. This is insanity. What is going on in academia? What are we teaching children? What are we talking about? How are we trying to get to this next step? And all of these things play a huge part in our future, but people aren't taking the time to see how we're being affected by all this type of stuff now. You cannot, as I've said before, there is no law that will give you freedom. And in a time like now, where everybody is hyper politicized, everybody's got an opinion because they have access to social media, you're seeing people chastise one another. You're seeing people go after people. We're not seeing compassion. We're not seeing understanding. We're not seeing true tolerance. And I say that word because we'll be getting into this drag queen stuff and everything else with that. You know, I don't mean to connect drag queens and you know, the mental health stuff, but these are genuinely people who need help, who are seeking some kind of help, and we're not giving it to them. And this is happening all over the world. Don't even get me started on big pharma. You know, again, what people are doing to self-medicate, to take care of themselves, and it's all being encouraged. I think that's what's even more dangerous. You know, we've talked about the opioid epidemic, how people are stuck on that, the problems that come with just trying to fix one, as far as AstraZeneca, you know, and all these other big pharma companies. You know, this is all important. What are people ingesting? What are we saying? What are we trying to create? And if people already have given up, they have this fatalistic mindset, you know, this pessimistic, you know, they don't care mindset. How is this something that we should be offering to our children? How is this something that we should be offering to the next generation? People don't have a whole lot of hope. I understand that. People are kind of lost, and we talk about this all the time. That is why it's upon the people who are trying to do things to step up even harder. You're seeing the best and the worst of us. And in this time frame, we're going to see a lot more revelations. But continuing on with this episode, talking about things such as big pharma, what's going on with just health in general. You know, we've talked about how because we do pay attention to health, we talk about things like the anomalous ailments, how they were just having random diseases, sicknesses pop up all over the place. But now, check this out. Apparently, and if you guys have seen I, Legend, you know the plot of what I'm about to tell you. But apparently, they have created, and these are British scientists, they've genetically modified a virus to kill cancer cells. And if that sounds like something out of a movie, as I said before, go check out Will Smith's I Am Legend. We put this up November 21st. It was reposted by Technocracy News. Originally, it's from The Sun. It says, on the surface of it, this is a health breakthrough that could potentially save hundreds of thousands of cancer victims. However, the technology has very dangerous applications in the wrong hands. A genetically modified virus that kills cancer cells and destroys their hiding places has been developed by British scientists. It targets both cancer cells and healthy cells that are tricked in protecting the cancer from the immune system. Fibroblasts, the main common type of cell in connective tissues, are vital in the body's healing process, but they can get hijacked by cancer-associated fibroblasts, or CAFs. These then help tumors grow, spread, and evade therapy. The new treatment, a form of immunotherapy developed by Oxford University scientists, attacks carcinomas, the most common type of cancer. Currently, any therapy that kills the tricked fibroblast cells may also kill healthy fibroblasts throughout the body. For example, in the bone marrow and skin, causing illness during the treatment. Using a virus called, and you guys are going to have to forgive me because I'm trying to pronounce this, it says Inadin Oturstriev. Okay, I hope they have an acronym because I am going to butcher that. Already being used in clinical trials as a cancer treatment. Experts were able to program the virus to attack only cancerous cells. The virus uses a protein to bind cancerous cells to immune cells to destroy the disease. These cells can't normally find unhealthy cancerous cells as they are hidden by CAFs. Lead author Dr. Carrie Fisher from the Department of Oncology at the university said, quote, even when most of the cancer cells in a carcinoma are killed, fibroblasts can protect the residual cancer cells and help them to recover and flourish. Until now, there has not been any way to kill both cancer cells and the fibroblasts, protecting them at the same time without harming the rest of the body. Our new technique is to simultaneously target the fibroblasts while killing cancer cells with the virus could be an important step towards reducing immune system suppression within carcinomas and should kickstart the normal immune process. Now, this is for people that don't know, because we have new listeners all the time. This is my father had prostate cancer, so I feel like any kind of development that happens regarding cancer is great, but obviously we have to approach these things with a very cautious lens. And when I make the reference to Will Smith's I Am Legend, that's kind of how a zombie outbreak started. People thought they had the cure to cancer. They went in and they got the cure, and they were killed. And this is how it spreads. We talk all the time about what's going on with the vaccines. That's how it would spread. So whenever you're talking about things like gene therapy, basically eugenics, modifying your DNA, and this is stuff that we'll talk about later on in the show with things like CRISPR-Cas9, the genome editing tool, and all these things, you have to think about the consequences. You have to think about the body. Recently, this week, a Chinese scientist genetically modified a embryo, and he has another one on the way. And the idea behind this was to make them immune resistant to HIV and AIDS. Now, my whole thing when looking at all these types of medical problems that we see happening, why are we getting sicker? Why are we not promoting actual health? Why do we think being healthy is getting your flu vaccine and then taking a handful of pills and then, maybe even having a few vitamins? Why don't we support, going outside, having a healthy diet, having a active lifestyle? Why don't we actually encourage any of these things that can actually move us forward? And because of these types of things, I'm going to pull up for you guys a clip. Because of these types of things, the CDC has assembled a task force to help tackle all of the cases of polio that are rising. Let's listen.
Illness. The CDC setting up a new task force of experts to study acute flaccid myelitis, or AFM, the paralyzing causing polio-like disease mainly affecting children, continuing to spread across the country. So far this year, the CDC confirming more than 100 cases in 29 states, including 3 in Georgia.
This is actually a pretty dramatic disease. These kids have a sudden onset of weakness.
Symptoms include drooping face and eyelids, difficulty swallowing, and sudden muscle weakness. That is your Rush Flash.
Crazy. Yeah, that wasn't super long. I only wanted to talk about it just so we could get it on record. But yeah, they are for sure. I don't want to say that they're releasing the bioweapon, but it feels like every other week or so we're talking about some kind of strange illness that's taking place, some kind of disease that's unfortunately claimed the lives of children. And now we're hearing that some of the migrants in the caravan are actually sick as well. But before we get into that, let's talk about this senator, this New York State Senator Jose Peralta, who received a flu shot and then unfortunately passed away 2 weeks later. This blows my mind. You know what? Here, before we do that, before I get into this article about Jose Peralta, let me play for you guys this retired hospital worker who drops a bombshell about the efficacy of vaccines.
I'm going to start with a quote by William Wilberforce, and he stated, "You can choose to look away, but you can never say you don't know again." I just retired from a local hospital here. No one believes in the flu shots. My colleagues, I didn't. Because the efficacy, and I won't give you data, you created the data. 10% one year, 18% the next, 40% at best. The flu mist you gave to our children from 2 to 8 years for almost 4 years, it never worked. 3%. Oh, well. I worked in a hospital where my colleagues, doctors and nurses and medical assistants and patient care and lab, we didn't believe in the flu shot. We were probably at 40%. And then came your mandates. And then came your recommendations. So you know what? For 4 years before I retired, I put a mask on, 12-hour shifts. It wasn't easy to breathe. But that's how much our one and
That's
all.
how much
start with a quote.
She was against getting the mandatory vaccines. People within healthcare, they have to get vaccines. They have to get vaccinated, especially in California. SB 277 and 279. This mandates vaccines for people who are around children, people who work in the medical health care field. They have to get it for fear of spreading. And we've talked about this. This is important because what we're seeing is the abdication of the right to choose. Our good friend Jesse of Vegan Takeover recently had his 3rd child. I wanted to say congratulations to him. Didn't get any vaccines, didn't get the HPV, didn't get the vitamin K shot, didn't get any nothing. They even threatened him with calling CPS. Said, "Go ahead and do it. We know our rights." But this is how it all works. They have to scare you into giving up your rights because a lot of people are unfortunately ignorant. A lot of people don't read the vaccine inserts. A lot of people don't take the time to understand their rights, their power, and how this is going to affect them and the coming generations. But here, let me get into this article right here from Collective Evolution. It was written by Richard Enos. We put this up November 27th. It says, after getting the flu shot, New York State Senator gets sick for 2 weeks and then dies. This is Jose Peralta. He was 47. On the eve of Thanksgiving, New York State Senator Jose Peralta, 47, died tragically and suddenly of what is being called septic shock. This New York Post article interviewed Peralta's wife, Evelyn, who offered a few details. Quote, all they said is he was septic. Evelyn Peralta said Friday afternoon after meeting officials with the city medical examiner's office. Quote, and that led to organ failure, she said, of her 47-year-old husband, the state Senate's first Dominican-American member. Quote, they need to do additional tests, she said. There is no final conclusion yet. They don't know what caused the fatal blood infection, she said. His body was poisoning itself, she added tearfully. I just came back from viewing the body. The doctor said it's rare, given his age, and that it happened so quick. He was healthy. He was a healthy guy. The New York Post article mentions nothing about the flu shot that Peralta had taken 2 weeks earlier. This New York Times article had a conversation with his director of communications, which revealed something interesting. He had been ill for at least 2 weeks, but had been reluctant to visit a doctor, according to Chris Sosa, his director of communications. After much prodding, he finally went for an exam recently and had a follow-up scheduled for December. It was like pulling teeth to get him to talk about not feeling well, Mr. Sosa said. He just thought he was having symptoms relating to getting the flu shot. The last point is important. Often when a person is sick, they have a pretty good idea of what caused it. When we have a hangover, we obviously think that we drank. When we have food poison, we can usually pinpoint what it is that we ate and what the problem was. With Peralta's thinking that he was suffering from symptoms related to the flu shot, it means that he must have felt fine before the flu shot and started feeling the symptoms after, perhaps even right after receiving the flu shot. And this is something I want you guys to go take the time to go look at. This is all important, you see. They are trying to compromise your health. They are trying to deteriorate you, dehumanize you, depopulate us. Unfortunately, we're seeing some of these types of tactics happen as you see them put the people within the migrant caravan. You see them de-leveling them or bringing them down to a subhuman position to where they are not regular people, to where they're not being treated as individuals. Yes, there's all kinds of political things attached to it, but what I'm trying to say is your health, taking your health back, is a revolutionary act. And if you continue to pay into a system that wants to experiment on you, violating the Nuremberg trial laws on human experimentation, then they will continue to normalize these types of disorders. They will continue to normalize that you, indeed, are the problem when we are the solution. But what's going to happen is we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to talk about this migrant caravan, a gun bill that would require people to search your social media history, and so much more. Apparently, Trump is thinking about launching a news network to talk about how great America is. Who knows? Could be like Obey Big Brother, could be like 1984. We will see on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. This is Freedom Faction on Factions of Freedom. We'll be right back right after this. Salutations, my friends. I'm here to talk to you about, that's right, CBD oil. CBD oil can reduce the risk of relapse among alcohol and cocaine addicts, and you know they're trying to flood us with both. According to a 2013 study published in the British Journal of Clinical Pharmacology, CBD was proven to have these benefits: relieving pain and inflammation, having antipsychotic effects, reducing anxiety, helping to fight cancer, relieving nausea, treating seizures, lowering incidences of diabetes, and also promoting cardiovascular health. Realized that in 2014, Purdue Pharma received FDA approval for an opioid drug that claimed to help curb the opioid addiction. This will actually help you curb your usage of opioids as well as your reliance upon them. And remember, guys and gals, stay vigilant. Expose lies and share truth. This is Noise Era, Freedom Faction, out. Yeah, things are kind of wild, but you know what? I would rather keep you people informed about these types of things instead of lying to you. The best way that I can say is I am here to help. I did not think doing all of this would lead me to where we are. However, life has a plan for you, and you have to do the type of work so that it reveals its plan to you. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in to this segment of Factions of Freedom. I have titled Third World Warfare. Why? Well, in our previous episode, we talked about how indeed they are using migrants. They're using third world populations to collapse first world countries. We saw it happen in Europe. We're seeing it happen here in America. And it's going to happen all over the world. You know, George Soros being the figurehead behind it, as we talked about, him spending $500 million in 2016 to fund the migrants. Yeah, we talked about that. And now it's happening. I talk about, Obama's whole presidency. The point behind Obama's presidency was to bring America down to a third world status nation, or third world status, so that Trump could come through and try to raise us a little bit, only for us to get knocked down again. This is why you see people commonly refer to some of these immigration policies being created underneath Obama. Obama locking kids up, Obama separating kids, Obama allowing a lot of the immigration to go through. This is factual. And what's happening now is Trump's coming through saying, "Hey, we're going to build that wall. We're going to fix immigration. It's crazy." But what I'm trying to say is all of these things are happening, as I said, here in America, in Europe, France. It's going to happen. It's kind of happening out there in China, but what you see them doing so much is kind of turning people away. And if they do get brought in, they kind of get sent to re-education camps. And you definitely don't hear a lot of people talking about the re-education camps in China. They are literally brainwashing people to not hate capitalism and hate America, but to become willing wards of the state. Very crazy things we see happening in China. But before we get into this segment, the Third World Warfare, let's talk about what's happening here domestically. Before we went to break, I told you how we're going to be talking about this gun bill that would require you to give over your social media history. That's kind of sketchy to me. Maybe because I don't like people prying where they shouldn't. But something about that really seems dangerous. We already know that they have Stingray technology to where they can just download your information anonymously. They can ping it off of like one of these cell phone towers or one of these Gwyn towers, and bing bang boom, they just can take your information. But now they're saying that authorities are using a new mysterious tool to virtually unlock any phone. We put this up November 23rd. It's by Michael Snyder for Freedom Outpost. It says your phone, your cell phone, is a gold mine of information about where you have been, who you have been talking to, and what you have been doing online. And now, a mysterious new tool is enabling law enforcement authorities all over the nation to get access to that information on virtually any phone. So if you end up going to prison someday, it could be the evidence that is pulled out of your cell phone that ultimately puts you away. Of course, most Americans never even consider that their own cell phones could be systemically gathering evidence against them. For most of us, cell phones are simply extremely convenient tools that allow us to communicate effectively with the rest of the world. But if authorities decide to investigate you, your cell phone is going to be one of the first things that they want. And what they find on there could put you behind bars for a very, very long time. I'll be honest with you guys before I continue on with this type of stuff. You know, I wonder if I wonder by doing any of this, if this is considered like against the law, if this is bad. Just talking about this type of stuff, really trying to just put the talking points out there, have like discussions about these things. I wonder if retroactively these people will try to come after me. And these are the types of things that you have to think about after you're already in the fray. But continuing on, it says there are some people out there that are still operating under the assumption that the data on their cell phones is safe from the prying eyes of law enforcement authorities. That actually has not been true for a long time, and now a new tool is enabling them to virtually unlock any cell phone anywhere. The following comes from WHIO. Law enforcement agencies are using a mysterious new tool to unlock cell phones of criminal suspects and access their text messages, emails, voice messages, and more. Some agencies around the country concerned about security are not even acknowledging the use of the devices, adding to the secrecy surrounding the new tool. One of the companies that makes and sells the devices to police and government agencies does not display their products on the company website. These are basically hacking devices, and it may take a number of hours, but they will eventually get into your phone. These hacking devices reportedly cost between $15,000 and $30,000, so they are quite expensive, but apparently law enforcement agencies all over the nation have been heavily buying them. Because if you can get into the cell phone of a suspect, it often provides everything that it needs to solve a case. And with that being said, I'm going to play this clip for you guys of this gun bill that would require buyers to hand over their social media passwords and search history. We're getting into the time frame to where your privacy, your individuality, your life, it's gone. It's archaic. They don't want it anymore. You want to have your own life? Well, everything has to be out there in the open. And if you don't let us have access to everything, well, isn't that what they said with all of the mass spying? Well, you shouldn't be afraid of anything if you have nothing to hide. All I'm trying to hide is myself. Sorry if I don't like always being out there with people, but I digress. Let's play this clip for you guys.
What if you were asked to give the government your usernames and passwords for your social media accounts?
This is an absolute travesty.
It'll make me unpopular, and that's okay.
If a bill in the New York State Senate is passed, those looking to buy a pistol permit would have to do just that. So the government could search for posts or searches related to profane slurs or biased language used to describe race, color, gender, and religion, as well as threatening posts or writing about an act of terrorism. As for we the people, it's drawing heated reviews.
It's something that shouldn't happen. You are allowed privacy in many venues, and this is one of them. You have a right to call Andrew Cuomo any name you want on your social media.
So if looking at somebody's social media profile where they may express neo-Nazi beliefs or anti-Muslim beliefs and they are wanting a firearm, absolutely they should be denied that permit because I want my kids to survive to adulthood.
Many who are against the bill argue that gun control law. What if you were asked to give the government your usernames and passwords?
Well, a whole lot of different things to look at. This is the surveillance state. This is the technocracy. This is how they are trying to basically install gun control for the next coming generation. She said neo-Nazi and anti-Muslim statements. Well, what about, I suppose, anti-tyrannical authoritarian government statements? What about anti-police statements? What about anti-geoengineering statements? What about everything we cover here? So, while it starts with one pointing the finger with some other people, we've got to look at all the other things that they'll add onto the actual list. And this ties into things like social credits, like the social credit score, the social credit system, and everything else that you see them trying to foist onto us. If people have not watched that episode of Black Mirror, Nosedive, they want to have unilateral surveillance control over it. Things like citizen threat ranking, things like your pre-crime minority report, all this stuff, this is the future that we are in. There's an article that came out today, or this week, talking about just that, how British cops want to stop crimes before they happen. Right there, Thought Police. British cops are building an AI program that will stop crimes that haven't been committed. Yeah, this is what I mean by the dystopian world we have found ourselves in. Now, before we went to break, we were talking about diseases, things that have to do, normalizing disorders, your health, the medical health industry. Let's start talking about this migrant caravan, giving you guys an update about that and more. This is what I mean by third world warfare. We don't see all of the a lot of people don't discuss a lot of the long-term effects of these types of things, but I'm going to go ahead and play for you this clip of how 1/3 of the migrants in the caravan are sick, some of them with deadly diseases. And what we keep hearing regarding the numbers is crazy. Some days it's 5,000, some days it's 6,000, some days it's 10,000. Then you have people saying, well, every other week or so we're having migrant groups of 2,000 come in. And I'm just like, where are these numbers coming from? How many people are coming? Ultimately, we have got to get a hand on this situation, but let's take a listen.
It is alarming news we're getting from Tijuana's health department yesterday. Before I give you those numbers, though, let me just show you for the 6,000 plus migrants that are in this cramped tent city, that tent, that little white tent attached to a small camper, is the extent of the health services available from Tijuana's municipal health department, and the numbers are alarming. Take a look at these. Of the 2,267 migrants that have been treated so far, we know that over 60% have respiratory infections. There are 3 confirmed cases of tuberculosis. There are 4 cases of HIV/AIDS, 101 cases of lice, and 4 cases of chicken pox. And hepatitis is a real concern here as well because of the overcrowding and unsanitary conditions. It's been raining all night, expected to rain all day. The migrants are cold, wet, and suffering from colds, and it is creating a situation of frustration, not only because of the fact that they're very sick right now.
Yeah, there's a sign.
It is alarming news we're getting from
There's a sign right there as the video was closing that says no spitting, because some of these diseases can be contracted by bodily fluids. And there's a report out there, or there's information floating around out there about people, transgender people, who are among some of the actual migrants, and once they're there, you see them spitting and carrying on and doing all of this type of stuff. They're trying to contain some of the diseases that are there, because again, if they're coming in, if they're trying to integrate into the country, you know, they're bringing with them the diseases. And I've talked about this before. It's not racist to say these types of things. Here within America, you know, people have a kind of generalized immune system due to the types of things that we're affected by, our environmental issues, our diet, and so here and so forth. In other countries, in places like Mexico, even Venezuela, all these other people, or all these other places that don't necessarily have our modern healthcare, or have our diet, or have any of the things that we have, our medical system, you see, they are susceptible to bringing these types of diseases with them. And now I know this is going to sound a little messed up to people, but we're not thinking about, again, how all of this affects us. I guarantee you we are going to have people from Antifa go through and try to liberate, I say that in air quotes, liberate the people who are not being allowed in. There's an 80% rejection rate. A decent amount of those people are not going to get in. That is going to, and there's already talks of people who are there, who are getting upset that they have to wait because they've been told that that's it. You know, you get on the bus, you get to the border, bing, bang, boom, they let you in America, and that's great. That's what they're being told. And now they have to wait? Oh, no, that doesn't make sense to them. It legit does not make sense. They were sold the idea of unlimited freedom as provided by the United States. But let's take another listen at a clip where they're saying that some of the migrants in the caravan used women and children as human shields during the gas attack. And I'll play for you the clip after this of the migrants breaking through our southern border and Border Patrol shooting tear gas and everything else at those people. But let's take a listen. When a group of migrants tried to break through the border fence in Tijuana, Mexico, U.S. Border Patrol guards fired their tear gas at them. The gas spread through the crowd, which included women and children. There were many children who fainted, many young children. My daughter also got gas, and there were many people who fainted. pregnant women. But Homeland Security Secretary Christine Nielsen said otherwise. It shows the tweet of what she said. Democrats were quick to express their outrage at the gassing. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, "These are the Jews fleeing from Germany. These are targeted families fleeing from Rwanda. These are communities fleeing from Syria." And while I would definitely have to agree with a lot of these types of things, because some of these people actually are coming here for support, they are actually coming here to try to flee some of these areas, we have to be aware of what's going on. I want to go ahead and kind of correlate this to what we saw a few years ago with the Dakota Access Pipeline, and people are unfamiliar with what that is. Basically, it was it was water protectors versus a pipeline being put together up in North Dakota. The standoff happened for months. They were shooting gas at people. They were conducting psychological warfare. They were flying planes over people while they were sleeping, spraying them with water while they were sleeping. They were doing all kinds of different things, as I said before, to dehumanize people. Eventually, the pipeline did get constructed, but these are the types of things that we're still seeing. I am staunchly against the police state. I am staunchly against the rise of authoritarianism, but that's what we're seeing right here on the border. We're seeing them start this whole chaos process. They're gonna, here, let me play for you this clip of these migrants breaking through the border fence. And for our audio listeners, I'll describe it for you. You're seeing groups of people, cameramen as well, camerawomen as well, find a sheet metal piece up against our border, and then they begin to cram in, calling other people, saying, "Hey, come, we found the spot, this is where you come." As you can hear in the background, there are helicopters circling over as more people get towards the gate. Photographers taking pictures, journalists taking video, and now they're running. The helicopter just doubled back. More people are trying to get in, and there's the shot. And everybody scatters. And there are the rocks. They begin throwing rocks in the fence. And so they begin shooting them again. So some people actually did get through. But some of the ones that got through, they are now hopping back through on the other side of the fence. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about this because basically, if you ask me, what I believe we're seeing, is the start of something crazy. You can't go around having people, you can't open fire on migrants. These are people who are fleeing. These are asylum seekers. These are people who are legitimately trying to start a new life. We can't open fire on people who are coming here trying to find a better life. And I talked about this in the previous episode, how your tax dollars are sent to the State Department, which is also sent to the United Nations to fund control of the borders. We don't control our own borders. We can control the Border Protection Agency, but we cannot control the borders. It's crazy. The bureaucratic bullcrap that gets talked about. What I'm trying to say is this has been going on. This is a fully fledged operation. This is a fully fledged operation. It's being exposed now because you're having numbers of like 3 million migrants or immigrants come in every year. This is let me explain this to you guys. We are in a perfect storm to have our country collapse. I'll be getting into this, GE and GM talking about how, their numbers aren't so good. We're taking hits. Jobless claims are down. We were told that the economy was coming back, But evidence is starting to show that that's not necessarily the case. We're having a hard time trying to recover and get back on point. They're firing people. It's crazy. And now we have, as I said before, migrants coming up from the south. You have all the devastation that's happening on our east border, or on the west coast, and we're in a perfect storm to have this country collapse. You have people within our own country who don't want to see America great. You have people who are chanting the no borders, no walls, no USA at all. You have numbers that show people are gravitating towards, I think it's towards democratic socialism. This is millennials. This is a millennial thing. At even larger numbers, people aren't wanting to work. Like man, you tell me where we're supposed to go from this. People are saying, let's just let it happen. And sometimes, I'm inclined to agree, because what comes after is what's more important. We are watching the end of a failing system. And you are desperately seeing them try to fight for something better, fight for that better tomorrow. But people don't want to fight. They want to give up. This is what we were talking about at the start of the show, with people aligning with this authoritarianism, this pessimism, this pessimistic, negative mindset has literally led people to where they just say, you know what? Damned if I do, damned if I don't. How about I just align with the government? They know what's best. I'm going to give up my individuality. I'm going to give up my future. I'm going to give up any self-determination because the government knows what's best for me. Check this out. Thousands of males, all male migrants, line up for food in Tijuana as Border Patrol fires gas on invaders. So people that have gotten through, or people who are in Mexico. Look at this. Look at this food line. It goes on forever. And I remember when I made this video, we put this up November 26th. It's by Tim Brown from Freedom Outpost. I remember when I put this up, I looked at some of the people, because I was talking with Georgie Trebleclef, the Proud Boy, about how some of these people who are coming through, they can, because Americans unfortunately are ignorant, they'll just shave their face, scruff up their hair, wear like a hat, and then put on a Mexican outfit, and bing, bang, boom, you got Abdul, who is now Jose. You see? You have Abdul Al-Hazar, who is now Jose Martinez. They can hang around these people and pick up the accent. You guys remember a few years ago how, big, bushy beards, big, huge Muslim beards were like a thing? And then it just went away. Now we're all clean shaved. It's because, again, these people were infiltrating. And they didn't want to scare the public. They just made it common. How many people do you think, let's really break this down. How many people do you think actually want to come here to work? How many people are fleeing totalitarian governments, crazy regimes? How many people are criminals? How many people are terrorists? How many, these are all numbers and things that people have to think about. But they don't want to, because it's dangerous, or it's scary, or or in the case of Jim Acosta, it doesn't exist. The migrant caravan doesn't exist. That's what he told us whenever he said he didn't put hands on that girl. Right here, report: at least 15 known terrorists have been arrested trying to jump the southwest border. This is by the Daily Caller, mainstream news, being reposted by the Daily Sheeple. It says more than a dozen suspected terrorists or people with close ties to Islamic militant groups have been arrested after trying to enter the country through the southwest border, according to the analysis of public records released Tuesday. Since 2001, there have been at least 15 confirmed cases in which members of terrorist groups, including the Islamic State and Al-Shabaab, were encountered at the U.S.-Mexico border or shortly after crossing illegally, says the report from the Center for Immigration Studies. These individuals were among the thousands of so-called special interest aliens, people from countries beset by terrorism, that are apprehended at the southern border on an annual basis. While President Trump may have raised the prospect of terrorist border infiltration to gain political advantage, facts would support his contention that Middle Easterners from places like Syria, Iraq, and Egypt, as well as from South Asia and the Horn of Africa, do indeed routinely travel the same routes as Hondurans to the U.S. southern border and that some terrorist suspects have traveled among them. The report's author, CIS fellow Ted Binsman, concluded. Binsman's analysis used publicly available news reports and court documents to identify instances where terror suspects sought to enter the U.S. by crossing through a port of entry or being smuggled across the border. Because it relies on public data, it likely undercounts the number of times a person with ties to terrorism was able to sneak into the U.S. via the southern border, Binsman says. He says, quote, absent the benefit of large body of classified and protected government information that also exists about the subject, this list therefore cannot be regarded as comprehensive, he wrote. In the most notorious case, a Somali national was arrested in 2011 after being smuggled through Central America and Mexico into California. Abdullahi Sharif was ordered deported by an immigration judge, but skipped bond and eventually crossed into Canada, where he went on to stab a police officer and run over pedestrians during an ISIS-inspired attack in Edmonton in September 2017. So they caught him in 2011. 2017 ran around, and he was out there running people over, stabbing police officers. And this is some real stuff. You know, we don't talk about the knife attacks in the UK. Don't talk about the knife attacks in France. Don't talk about the drivings over that happened. Like, this is some real stuff. So that's why gun control doesn't work. People are crazy. They are going to find a way to kill people, and this is something that we can't stop. They're going to use cars. They'll use guns. They'll use hammers. They'll use books. They'll use piano wire. You know, we have to be aware of all the things that are going on. You see, and this is, remember the New Mexico jihadis that we talked about that nobody seems to have any information on these days? The guy was out there literally raising children up, training them, giving them weapons training. Then he like ritualistically sacrificed one kid, and that's how they found them. Yeah, we're not talking about that. Remember those training camps, those jihadi training camps on the other side of the border? Very real stuff. So when we're looking at the migrant caravan, yeah, it's pretty important. They're waving flags. They're talking about, you know, no borders, no wall, no USA at all. They're going to tear it down. Like, these are people who have been given money, incentivized to come through and do these types of things. And here in America, there's nobody here that wants to stand up for privacy, individuality, freedom, or any kind of true prosperity. This is what I mean by third world warfare. We're adopting ideologies that we were supposed to forget. We were supposed to have this kind of concept of American exceptionalism, ideas that literally made us the new Atlantis. And because of things like globalization and globalism, we are now adopting communism, socialism, and fascism. We were supposed to be set apart from all these things, being substantial and phenomenal. But because you have so many people who have given up, who don't see a real reason to fight, here is where we find ourselves. But check this out. President Trump wants to expand Trump TV International to show how great America is. This is by Aaron Kessel of Activist Post. We put this up November 28th. It says, U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted on Monday to suggest the creation of a new global television news network run by his administration to counter CNN International's unfair and false portrayals of the United States. Quote, while CNN doesn't do great in the United States based on ratings, outside of the U.S. they have very little competition. Throughout the world, CNN has a powerful voice portraying the United States in an unfair and false way. Trump tweeted, something has to be done, including the possibility of the United States starting our own worldwide network to show the world the way we truly are great. Trump continued tweeting, the U.S. government already runs a global broadcast network called Voice of America, which employs 1,000 people, sending $235 million last year alone to create various programs in 40 different languages, which promotes how, quote, great America is. It is also worth noting that Trump previously quietly launched his own propaganda news network using a webcast last year called Real News Update, in a move straight out of George Orwell's dystopian society, 1984, a Ministry of Truth. President Trump's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, heads the news organization being deemed Trump TV, funded by Trump's re-election campaign, according to the Daily Beast. Trump's plight about mainstream media news and their lack of positive news about his administration will finally be heard using Facebook to broadcast Trump TV. Topics include job growth, the stock market, the economy, and other positive news about Trump's achievement for the week. We've actually talked about this. We played for you guys some of the clips too. But I'm going to go ahead and stop there because what we're beginning to talk about is that while I do think it's good that we're trying to have America be great again, that we are trying to stand for these types of things, I am very cautious about having all of those types of things being directed towards one individual. A lot of these issues were out here beforehand. We're just trying to do our best right now to fix it. So a whole lot. We'll see what happens with that. If it develops, he already has his real news update. He already has various talk show hosts spouting off the propaganda he needs to create the headlines that he wants. And real quick, I'll say this before I get into our next article about GE and GM. Apparently, he tweeted a picture of Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Eric Holder, John Podesta, all of these deep state operatives behind bars, saying now that the Russian collusion story is over, maybe we can start trials. A few weeks ago, we talked about this on the show, but apparently Hillary Clinton she's got to report. She's got to answer for what were in those emails. Personally, I would like to see these types of things happen. Personally, I would love to see them lock her up. But I know how these types of things work. Could it be for political points? Who knows? Hillary Clinton was going to be asked 5 questions about her emails. Who decided to create the Hillary Clinton or the ClintonEmail.com system? When was it created? Why was it created? Who set it up? And when did it become operational? But I'm going to play for you guys this clip that we put up November 15th from Sign of the Times of how Hillary must answer key email questions in 30 days. This is a U.S. federal judge that ordered that.
More than 2 years after Hillary Clinton refused to answer some of Judicial Watch's questions about her email server, a judge is stepping in to make her comply. One America's Karen McKinney has the latest on the lawsuit.
A federal court rules in favor of forcing Hillary Clinton to testify about her email scandal. Judge Emmett Sullivan made the decision Wednesday in response to a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit brought by Judicial Watch. The conservative watchdog group wants to make Clinton answer important questions about the creation and use of her private server. The last time Clinton testified about the issue under oath, she skipped 20 out of the 25 questions presented by Judicial Watch.
We also went back to the court and asked Judge Sullivan, Judge Emmett Sullivan here in the District of Columbia. We asked him to require Hillary Clinton to answer questions she refused to answer, specifically, if I recall correctly, that she did not want to answer questions about why she continued to use and conducted used personal device.
More than 2 years after Hillary...
Lock her up. I hope we do. Her and Bill are touring right now, an evening with the Clintons. I think they sold like 16% of tickets whenever they first went out. And I put together the video. It's hilarious. Bill does this little hop skip thing, and Hillary has a whole coughing fit to where the guy can't even ask questions because she's just so bad. I'll play it for you guys here in the next segment. But to finish out this segment, let's talk about some of this economic news, Trump and stuff like this. What's going on? What's going on? GM will cut 14,000 jobs and idle plants as sales slump. General Motors and General Electric were both victimized by the same Ponzi scheme, and they are both telling the U.S. the economy is in huge trouble. We put this up November 27th. This is by Edward Morgan of Prepare for Change. It says America's twin economic generals are both in deep trouble, General Electric and GE. It is closing both of these places. They're closing a bunch of factories and laying off approximately 14,000 workers as it anticipates disappointing sales and a slowing economy. If the U.S. economy was really, quote, booming, both of these companies would probably be thriving. But as you will see, both of them have been victimized by the exact same Ponzi scheme, and both firms are sending us very clear signals that the U.S. economy is heading for troubled waters. Whenever you hear the word restructuring, that always is a sign that things are not going well for a company. And as it turns out, the GM's restructuring is actually going to cost the firm $3.8 billion. General Motors said Monday it plans to effectively halt production at a number of plants in the U.S. and Canada next year and cut more than 14,000 jobs in a massive restructuring that will cost $3.8 billion. Of course, GM doesn't have $3.8 billion just laying around, and so they are actually going to have to borrow money in order to close these plants and lay off these workers. Needless to say, President Trump is not very happy with General Motors right now. Trump said he spoke Monday with GM CEO Mary Barra and, quote, "I told them, you're playing around with the wrong person." He told reporters as he left the White House for a pair of political rallies in Mississippi that the United States, quote, "has done a lot for General Motors. They better get back to Ohio, and soon." There is no way that Mary Barra should have ever been made CEO of General Motors, and now the entire world is going to see why. In addition to the elimination of about 6,000 factory jobs, GM will also be cutting about 8,000 white-collar jobs. And this is crazy. If you heard me talk about it, the collapse of capitalism will happen underneath Trump. They are trying to usher in this globalist world, and they can't have an economically independent and economically prosperous country like America doing things. Because we have this whole thing of rugged individualism, we'll make whatever we want. This is why Apple's literally just hopped the border. All kinds of car factories hopped across the border just to make cars there. It's cheaper. And this is globalization. So what I'm trying to say and wrap up with this one is we have swaths of third world people coming here. They're cutting off the jobs. Automation is happening. The socioeconomic reformation is taking place. And this is all going to lead us into this new world order. There are so many things happening right now. I don't understand how people aren't excited by it. Change is happening on so many levels, both good and bad, that, as I said before, it's bringing out the best and the worst in all of us. And who knows where this will lead us, whether or not people go for things like universal basic income, whether or not we go towards bankruptcy. Like there's so many different things happening in this country of ours that it is crazy, and I myself am not really sure where to go from here. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to bust into this stuff like designer babies. I'm going to play for you this video of a drag queen going to a committee event talking about how we're going to groom your kids. Okay, you're all intolerant of me being a stripper. You're all intolerant of me being a drag queen cross-dresser. You're all intolerant of me being a militant homosexual, basically. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to go teach your kids to be tolerant of us. It's crazy. We're going to get into that and more on the other side. Apparently, Google has a plan to monitor moods, movements, and behaviors. And if you guys have been paying attention to the show, I played for you guys that video of Tucker Carlson where he pointed this out. They have the patents. They're going to do these things. This is what I mean by generational manipulation. And what we just talked about was third world warfare. But don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back right after this. Yeah, it's not slowing down. You're on that merry-go-round, you're on that roller coaster, and I'm not talking about your emotions. I'm talking about the world. If you're paying attention, you are charged. It's like when somebody throws a ball in the air, you're just waiting for it to come down. What is happening to people? There's so many things psychologically, emotionally, spiritually happening to us that I don't really think a lot of people take the time. We have a lot of selfies, but no self-knowledge, no awareness of the individual. And this is very dangerous territory that we're stepping into. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in to the final segment of this edition. We're going to be talking about designer babies, drag queen grooming, a father being charged with child abuse after he refused to let his child dress up as a girl. Yeah. That's the insanity that we're dealing with towards the end of 2018. Don't you think that's crazy? You can literally you could get charged with child abuse because you're standing up for your child, and because it's culturally relevant to be outraged by some literal lunacy. Well, this kid has effectively besmirched and discredited his father. That's crazy. That is crazy. But one of the bigger things that's making news, besides us talking about drag queens and transgenders and cross-dressers, this is what's going on in America. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. You have scientists designing babies that are resistant to HIV and AIDS. And you know what America's doing? We're literally losing our mind. We're dressing up as the opposite sex, saying you better appreciate me. You got the rest of the world over here getting seriously ready about everything, and we're over here playing. We're walking around like we got our thumbs up our butt, man. Like, think about this. It blows my mind that we are literally here. You're talking about thought police, designer babies, transhumanism, transgenderism. All of this stuff is nuts to me. But here, let me play for you guys this clip of the Chinese scientist creating designer babies.
The Chinese researcher told the Associated Press he helped create the world's first genetically edited babies. They are twin girls whose DNA he claims to have altered when they were embryos.
I feel a strong responsibility that it's not just to make it first, but also make it as example.
Dr. He Jiankui says he modified embryos for 7 couples during fertility treatments. One resulted in the birth of the twins this month. During IVF, one sperm cell was inserted into an egg. After fertilization, a DNA editing technique called CRISPR-Cas9 was used to disable a very specific gene that allows the AIDS virus, HIV, to infect white blood cells. The goal was to render the babies immune to HIV. Despite that, the response to the announcement was near universal condemnation.
In cases where the potential risks are substantially higher than the benefits, which I think is the case here, that is not ethical. I would say that no babies should be born at this point in time following the use of this technology.
While this kind of gene editing has been tried to treat serious adult diseases, the DNA changes stay in that person. Sperm, egg, or embryo gene editing make changes that can be passed on to all future generations, and there are often so-called off-target effects where other genes are also altered. There are also concerns it could lead to designer babies, allowing parents to choose traits like hair and eye color, or even intelligence and athletic ability.
It will.
Now, those last traits are determined by combinations of many, many genes, and they'll be much harder to manipulate. Meanwhile, the universities where the researcher and his American collaborator had worked say they are currently on unpaid leave and are calling for an investigation. But as often happens, science is racing far ahead of our ethical ability to handle with all of its implications.
Really opens up Pandora's box here.
There's a lot going on here that we're going to have to deal with.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely glad that guy said it. Thank you, newscaster man, announcer guy. Yes, we are for sure opening up Pandora's box. And I talk about this all the time, the epigenetic and the eugenic factors that we're not really thinking about. What caused the disease in the first body to manifest? If we're not fixing that actual thing, we're not fixing it for the coming generations. And that's kind of crazy. You know, they say what you fix for yourself, you fix for your offspring, for generations. That's why you have to get over whatever internal issues you have so that you can heal yourself and those that come after you. Now, what we're seeing here take place with these designer babies is just that. They're going to have it to where we're going to have people who, I'm sure we already have people who are genetically modified and who are designer babies, like water clones. Like we're already in this reality, and I think that's what's crazy. Just the other week, we talked about how there's a half pig, half human hybrid out there. You know, and lab-grown muscles developing brains, kidneys, and organs. And this is the world that we're living in. I think ethically, everybody can agree to the effect, to the degree that they don't want some super smart, extraordinarily intelligent, biologically enhanced, genetically modified race of people out there, because, well, if Darwin's theory of evolution has any merit, then indeed survival of the fittest is real, and we will be overrun. If we create these people, they will, I don't want to say overrun us, but it's going to pollute the gene pool. It's going to change a whole lot of stuff, like we were talking about in the previous episode. They're trying to biohack your bloodline. And there's so much that comes with this, but let me play for you guys this other clip of the very same scientist, He Jiankui, I'm sure I mispronounced that, talking about how he has more designer babies on the way. So regardless of how you feel ethically, we're going ahead. We're going to create more genetically edited babies.
You said that there's been no other implantations, but just to be clear, are there any current pregnancies with embryos that have been genome edited as part of your clinical trials? There is another one, but you need to tend to monitor. It's what? There's another potential pregnancy.
I think it's at a very early stage, so yeah, it's a chemical pregnancy, right?
Yes. If this was going to be your baby, would you have gone ahead with this? Okay, that's good. So if it's my baby may have the same situation, I would try it first.
It would be irresponsible to proceed with any clinical use of germline editing unless and until the safety issues have been dealt with in this broad societal consensus. Basically,
you said that there's been no other implantation.
You're going to hear publicly the government's whole line is deny, deny, deny. That's what they have to do. They have to deny. I'm sure this is already going on. Human experimentation going on. Biohacking going on. Grinders, people who are not in mainstream academia, who are going ahead with things like CRISPR-Cas9 to edit their genes. It's already happening. This is a dangerous box we're opening. This is the whole crux of the transhuman agenda, to where they can say, you know what, right now you are flawed. Right now you are weak. You are a weak human. Let us fix you. Let us modify your genes. Let us edit your genome. But realize that when you're modifying your genomes, you're also modifying your child's. You're modifying their children. This is a very, very, very dangerous thing that we see developing. Science, China, North Korea, South Korea, they've been engaged in cloning for decades, since like World War II. We've been involved in cloning since like World War II. And now, you know, I guess what I'm really trying to get around to saying is, you know, they're going to have, that's what the whole super soldier program is. They're going to have people who are like transhuman, who have like the blood of the speed of a cheetah, you know, the strength of a lion, or the courage of a lion and the strength of a bull. You know, they're going to make minotaurs. They're going to make centaurs. They're going to make the griffin. They're going to make all these types of things. That's the beauty about history. It repeats itself to people who don't listen. That's what they said the whole flood was about, right? The biblical flood is that flesh became so wicked that that's all people thought about was evil stuff. They had to start all over because their gene pool became so corrupted. People were unable to actually procreate. Well, where are we today? Where are we today? I'm going to play for you guys this clip of this drag queen kid goes to a library meeting and says, I know you all don't want me here. I can see you guys staring at me. And, you know, I'm sorry that I offend you, but you will learn to be tolerant of me. And I think I find that kind of scary because, again, remember a few years ago, that picture of the topless feminists beating up the priest that was praying? You're going to have militant people who are saying, you better accept me. You better love me, when they don't love themselves. How can we accept them when they don't accept who they are? This is what I mean, again, by the psychosis, the legalizing the lunacy, this insanity that we see perpetuating. The whole idea behind Pedogate and Pizzagate and Spirit Cooking was to expose how there are pedophiles within high-ranking places trafficking in children. Spirit Cooking as well, how they literally, how they traffic in souls, how they eat people, how they eat children, and how they're doing this type of stuff. But now, don't worry, all because they're flying the banner of equality under LGBTQ 5467. We now have to accept this. And I make sure, I don't know if I did it right then, I make sure to try to attach the P for pedophilia on the LGBTQP movement, because they're now trying to be acknowledged as minor persons. This whole thing that we see happening is so that they can groom your child. We're aware of what's happening, but if they can give your child hormone blockers, if they can give your child oxycodone, hydrocodone, thorazine, if they can give your child fluoride, all the stuff that they're just berating your child with all kinds of chemicals to make them basically brain dead, they can't fight up, they can't stand back. They're desensitized and indoctrinated. That's just mentally. And then they say, you know what? Hey, little Jimmy, because little Jimmy's all whacked out on all kinds of pills. Hey, little Jimmy, are you sure you're not Janine? And because they're in this state of psychosis, as induced by big pharma, all these drugs and everything else they're giving to people, little Jimmy starts thinking, well, maybe I might be Janine. I might be. And so little Jimmy goes and gets a sex change operation, or starts to go through pre-transition therapy. He gets all of this stuff, gets all the chemicals, gets the hormone, all these things. Little Jimmy thinks, oh man, this is great. Mind you, he's already on all kinds of, you know, now he's got all this chemical cocktail happening inside of him, and now little Jimmy thinks, well, maybe I am Janine. But then once little Janine gets off all the hormone blockers and all these other pills, little Janine realizes that she's not a Janine. She was a Jimmy. She was a Jimmy, and they literally manipulated him into becoming a Janine. But now Janine cannot go back to Jimmy. Janine has to stay as Janine. And the whole reason I go off on this tangent is, yeah, I know that sounds ridiculous, but how many people do you think have actually gone through that? Sex change regret numbers are on the rise. Like, there's a whole series on it. I think it's on like Discovery Channel. They launched it because people are like, you know, I regret this. I really do. And this it's crazy, because these are people that still need help that we're not effectively treating. I digress. Let me play for you guys this clip of this Dylan Pontiff speaking at Louisiana's Lafayette Library Board of Committee.
My name is Dylan Pontiff. I'm actually going to be one of the drag queens reading for Drag Queen Storytime. So apparently to a lot of people in this room, I'm the big boogeyman. And as you can see, I'm probably the most unintimidating person you've ever seen in your entire life. I decided to do this event whenever it was introduced because I have nieces and nephews that I love very much, and I'm a person that has been through a lot in their lives. I've been bullied most of my life for being a gay male, being not necessarily what the typical man is. And I thought that this event could be something that shows people and shows children, especially at that age, that understanding that people are different than you doesn't necessarily make them unnormal or makes them not good. And I think that what's truly sad is that once I was announced as the person reading, the amount of hate that I received because of this resolution that is been presented to this board. I've been called an it, I've been called disgusting, and I don't think any of these people know me well enough to say any of those things, but I think that the true misunderstanding of what this event is supposed to be and what me dressing up in drag for it is going to be. I am not there to push any kind of agenda. I was told at the Library Council meeting last night that I'm pushing the trans agenda. I'm pushing an overly sexualized agenda, and that is furthest from the truth. I am just as talented as a singer or a dancer or anyone that has a special talent. It just mine is dressing up as a woman and entertaining a crowd. Now, everywhere you can go, you can see that people can change their views for certain audiences. Just as much as someone can be an actor and be in an actor movie for a rated R movie, and they can go around and be in a G-rated movie, I can go and entertain adults in a club, but also entertain a group of students and young children. I'm able to do that because I'm an adult and I know how to filter myself. And I just think that it is implorable of some of the opinions that I've seen and some of the looks I received here tonight. The eyes that people give you whenever they think that you are the one that's in support of this event is truly disgusting. And I am not here to obviously change anyone's views about me, but I'm here to let you know that this event is something that's going to be very beautiful. And for the children and the people that support it are going to realize that this is going to be the grooming of the next generation. We are trying to groom the next generation to not see the way that they just did. And just because I said that, you heard the little plur of people behind me. It's disgusting. We are trying to teach people to be tolerable, to be patient, to be loving. And the fact of the matter is that I'm standing right here and there's probably 50 people behind me looking at me with daggers, wishing that I would probably die in a car wreck whenever I leave here. It's truly implorable. And that is what we're trying to do at Drag Queen Storytime. We're trying to raise people to be loving and caring individuals. And I really hope that this event is going to do that for not only just the children at this event, but children in the future. Thank you.
Wow. Okay. Well, what do you say to that? Grooming the next generation. Fully aware of what they are doing. This is the end of Drag Queen. Well, not even the end. This is the rise of Drag Queen Storytime. This is why they're grooming you. You got to think. You know, I remember when I was little. I'm gonna go on a little bit of a side tangent for you guys. I remember when I was little, sitting in my grandfather's lap at like a McDonald's, celebrating my birthday. There was a Power Rangers cake. I remember that. You know, it was awesome. I loved Power Rangers. I remember that. I remember Power Rangers at McDonald's with my grandpa. These children are gonna remember these drag queens at the library. I remember going to the library, reading books, checking them out, hanging out there, doing nerdy stuff, playing chess. These kids are going to remember that that strange-looking individual, eyes wide open, reaching for them, smiling, talking in a strange voice. They're going to remember that. Okay, what I'm trying to say is they're trying to traumatize and indoctrinate these children early. The word grooming comes from law enforcement. And they use that word whenever they say that grooming gangs, people that go around and rape people, that's very real. It's crazy to think about that this person has the gall to step out in public and say, we're going to groom your kids. We're going to teach your kids to accept this. Little Jimmy is going to become Janine. It doesn't matter what you think. And if you try to go into the schools, we're going to label you a racist, a bigot, a homophobe, and a xenophobe. And your child is going to be persecuted. This is insanity. If they can't, this is what you got to think. If they can get access to your kids, they have no need for you. You know, they want the next generation. Doesn't matter what you say. So I guess my question then becomes, if this individual, Dylan Pontiff, if he's aware of things like the over-sexualization agenda, why is he doing these types of things? He's saying he can entertain adults at strip clubs. He can entertain people, but he can dial it back for children. Since when have you guys ever seen a stripper with children publicly? And I say publicly because privately, some mothers are strippers, and we've all seen videos of them doing stuff when their kid walks in, and it's hilarious because they fall off the pole. But I digress. This is the over-sexualization of children. This is the disassociation that they're trying to teach people. This is the social engineering on steroids. And and this is what's crazy too, this popped up earlier this week, dead naming. Apparently dead naming is and I don't have the article to pull up for you guys, but apparently dead naming is where if we were to name Bruce Jenner instead of Caitlyn Jenner, we would be criticized because Bruce Jenner is dead, Caitlyn Jenner is alive. Dead naming is where you're literally bringing back who somebody was prior to them going through this transition. This is where we're at now. And I wanted to get into this with Adam of Shamanic Philosophy. If you guys didn't check out that episode, super powerful. But we talked about things like transhumanism and transgenderism. And I personally think this. It's going to sound kind of crazy. But, you know, what if there is some kind of soul reincarnation process, some soul recycling process, and with everything they're doing inside of the environment, they are destabilizing this recycling process. So when people come back saying, hey, I'm a girl, but they're in the body of a boy, they could actually be right. Their soul, and this is where you get into the philosophical debate, souls don't have genders, but they do have identity. You know, what if this whole process is being mixed up? I try to be extraordinarily sympathetic to these people, but what we're seeing now is they're going past sympathy. They're saying you're not tolerant. They're saying love me while they beat you in the face. They're saying you better accept me for who I am, as they change into a whole nother getup. These are dangerous waters we're wading in. And I think no other evidence of this type of insanity can be displayed other than this next article I'm going to get in with you folks, because this takes the cake. This blows my mind. And right now it's got currently 3,328 likes on our page to show you guys kind of where people's heads are at. We put this up November 28th. It's by Ricky Scaparo of End Times Headlines. It says, father refuses to allow 6-year-old son to dress like a girl. Now he's been charged with child abuse. A Texas father in the middle of a high-stakes legal battle that could end in him losing his son. Jeffrey Younger has been charged with child abuse for not affirming his ex-wife's decision to raise their son, James, as a girl. According to court document, James's gender identity depends on which parent he is staying with. He dresses as a little girl only when he is with his mother, who calls him Luna. However, Jeffrey told the Federalist his son insists on wearing boys' clothes and, quote, violently refuses to wear girls' clothes at my home. The mother accuses Jeffrey of, quote, emotional abusive behavior towards James by refusing to affirm his identity as a girl. Court documents list at least one example of quote, abuse, which includes cutting James's hair and other non-affirming actions. Quote, although unclear if this behavior rises to the level of family violence at this time, the father's aggression is becoming more common and more intense, the document says. Yeah, man, I would be irate if my wife took me to court saying, you better love James and Luna. It's like, I can love them, but now when you go into court, you're making it a deal, and now look at where it's spiraled out to. But continuing on, it says the Federalists reports the mother wants to strip Jeffrey of his parental rights. Quote, she is also seeking to require him to pay for the child visits to a transgender affirming therapist and transgender medical alterations, which may include hormonal sterilization starting at age 8. How is this a schedule? I'm blown away reading this. James's mother has taken him to see a transition therapist who diagnosed him with gender dysphoria. However, the therapist notes that James prefers to be called Luna when he is with his mother, but when he is with his father, to be called James. Eyewitness accounts support Jeffrey's observations of James preferring to be a boy. Quote, based on 3 occasions I've spent time with him, I'd say he acts and looks unmistakably like a healthy 6-year-old boy. I am praying for James, an average 6-year-old boy, a sweet-natured, intelligent, lovable, and at this point particularly vulnerable young man caught up in a titanic clash of worldviews. Bill Lovell, the senior pastor of Christ Church, Carrollton, said, like, this is crazy. And if we have the time, you know, I'll see if I can pull up the clip for you guys of Desmond the drag kid. I don't think we have the time for it, but this is it. This is what's happening. This is what happens with things like Drag Queen Storytime, with people like Dylan Pontiff, when they have access to your kids, to where transgenderism is being promoted. There's a show on Netflix, the promoting it is where you're being like a superhero as a drag queen. I don't understand it. And I think that's what I find dangerous, is that it doesn't matter. We don't have to understand it. This is the agenda. Because we're not being inclusive. We're not being respectful. You see, we're not being tolerant, as they say. It's like, no, I'm actually very, very tolerant of these types of things. I would just prefer for you not to teach them to my children. I know that's a crazy idea. I'm sorry, I don't want my child to be hypersexualized at the age of 6. But you know, I whatever you decide to do in the privacy of your own quarters, you're gonna do it. I know it. I'm just purposely asking that you don't project these things onto my kids and others. Let them take the time to try to discover these types of things. But in this world, they're really trying to stop that. But with the time frame that we have left, I want to kind of wrap this episode up, talking about societal manipulation, generational manipulation, why we have to abide by these rules put forth, and what it all means. You know, Google is trying to control people's behavior. The UK, they have a social media manipulation program right here. Google plans to monitor moods, movements, and behaviors. We put this up November 26th. It's from the Drudge Report feed. Now, before I actually play for this, I want to play you guys this. I want to play the clip of Tucker Carlson talking about this patent before it actually happened. It's months ago, 9 months ago, he talked about this. Their creepy tech line. But let's take a listen.
Of the big tech companies whose brand of surveillance capitalism has come to shape our politics and culture in ways that many people don't perceive. Tonight we want to give you a very specific example of that. It's both a look into the near future and a terrifying illustration of the control these companies seek over our daily lives. We recently reviewed several patents filed by Google. As we describe them, ask yourself if you're comfortable giving this much power to unelected technocrats you have never met. In the first patent, filed in September of 2016, Google envisions how it could send you personalized advertising based on what a camera observes in your home. In the illustration that Google submitted to the federal government, the Patent Office, a camera in your bedroom sees a Godfather novel on your nightstand next to your bed and uses that to steer you to watching the movie. If you think that's creepy, prepare yourself, because it gets a lot creepier. In another patent application from September 2016, Google imagines how it could take control of your parenting, your relationship with your children. Google's smart home system could detect children near a liquor cabinet, for example, or in their parents' bedroom, infer that, quote, mischief is occurring, and deliver a verbal warning. In another example, Google imagines a hypothetical child called Benjamin. Google's cameras would be watching Benjamin at all times, carefully. They could see if he's playing outside or using electronics. Presumably, they'd also try to use that information to sell him things at some point, because that's the whole point of Google. The same patent also discusses how the smart home could coach families on, quote, areas of improvement. For example, if a family doesn't spend enough time together, eating together, in Google's estimation, Google might scold them and suggest that they set a goal of eating more often together. That is Google's description, not ours, by the way. We contacted Google for comment on this, and the company, and we're assuming it was a person and not a robot, replied this way, quote, we file patent applications on a variety of ideas that our employees come up with. Some of those ideas later mature into real products or services, some don't. In other words, don't worry. We're not spying on you yet. We just have a patent for it.
And that was 9 months ago that they had that patent. Let's see if this article matches up anything with what Tucker Carlson just said right there. Patents recently issued to Google provide a window into their development activities. While it's no guarantee of a future product, it is a sure indication of what interests them. What we've given up in privacy to Google, Facebook, and others thus far is minuscule compared to what is coming if these companies get their way. These patents tell us that Google is developing smart home products that are capable of eavesdropping on us throughout our home in order to learn more about us and better target us with advertising. It goes much further than the current Google Home speaker that's promoted to answer our questions and provide useful information, and the Google-owned Nest thermostat that measures environmental conditions in our home. What the patents describe are sensors and cameras mounted in every room to follow us and analyze what we are doing throughout our home. They describe how the cameras can even recognize the image of a movie star's image on a resident's t-shirt, connected to the person's browsing history, and send the person an ad for a new movie the star is in. One patent reads, quote, according to the embodiment of this disclosure, a smart home environment may be provided with smart device environment policies that use smart devices to monitor activities within a smart device environment. There's a lot of smart devices. Report on these activities and or provide smart device control based upon these activities. So clearly they want to monitor us and report back what we're doing. It goes on to describe an example in the use patent legalese, but it's worth providing here the exact description for you to see, in particular the last sentence. By way of example, the high-power processor and the low-power processor 22 may detect when a location, e.g. a house or a room, is occupied, up to and including whether it is occupied by a specific person or is occupied by a specific number of people. So what we're beginning to see is just that. Google and Facebook and everybody else, they want access to your life. They want access to you. They want to know what you're doing at all times. And if we give them this kind of this unilateral control of our lives, then we will literally just be extensions of this company. You see, that's the whole point. That's the whole reason why I'm here, is to raise awareness about these types of things. The mark of the beast, the social credit score system, the technocracy, the New World Order is rearing its ugly head, and we have a duty to point these types of things out. Let me close out this episode talking about just that, the implant, the microchips. This is the real goal of the New World Order, of the Illuminati. We've played it for you. Aaron Rousseau, in his groundbreaking 2006 interview with Alex Jones of InfoWars, talking about how that's what the Rockefellers want. They want to be able to turn off your chip if you're not a good slave, if you're not a good statist, if you're not a good robot, obedient. I'm not going to play it for you here, but already in Sweden, cash is basically non-existent. And what happens whenever we move towards this cashless world? But let's take a listen.
The invisible door unlocker is hidden between the thumb and forefinger of his left hand, a microchip that Frisk had implanted under his skin.
Like me and my best friend stopped.
His girlfriend recently had herself chipped as well.
Futuristic.
It's trendy.
It has many other uses besides unlocking the door.
Oh, word?
They can also store e-tickets for the train, for example.
Oh, that's so good.
And that's just the beginning for this couple.
But I think the interesting thing is when the chips start getting smarter and start having, sensors and things like that. So instead of just opening a door, maybe I can continuously record my body temperature, my blood sugar levels, etc., and actually give me useful information about my body.
The Stockholm subway system also has plans to modify their turnstiles so they can be opened with implanted chips. Over 3,500. The invisible door.
He says he'll give himself useful information about his health. He'll give everybody else useful information about his health, about his whereabouts, about his tracking, about his patterns, about where he's going, what he's buying, who he's talking to. Useful information. You are the useful information. And the useful idiot. That's what they want. They don't want us to think about, again, the long-term applications of introducing these types of things to us. What happens when you have something that gives off its own frequency? It's going to interrupt with your own frequency. So many different things to talk about when it comes to microchip implants and much more, but we don't have the time. I wanted to talk about that in this segment of generational manipulation to show you, while China's over here developing designer babies, we're encouraging people to lose their mind. And across the world, people are going ahead with the New World Order, with automation, with the technocracy, with this one world government. And we have to do our best to point these types of things out, not only for ourselves and for our common man, but for the coming generations that we can't even think of. And with that being said, that's all I really have for you guys and gals. This is Normalizing Disorders, Third World Warfare, and Generational Manipulation. And that's it. I know, we kind of jumped all over the place, as is the typical show format, and if you had a little bit of a problem following, you can always download the show notes. These days that we're moving forward into, they are becoming indeed crazy, but I think the best thing that we can do is try to check ourselves. Not really get caught up in all the chaos that's going on, but understand that we have to grow through these problems. It's what comes out on the other side that's important. I know, crazy things are happening, indeed, and that's why we see this quickening taking place. However, I'll be right with you as it all happens. And that's all I really have for you guys and gals. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll have it in the description bar below. And as always, guys and gals, stay vigilant, expose lies, and share truth. This is Noisera, Freedom Faction, out.